Are you interested in becoming a permanent part of the channel or having a direct impact on the type of content that I create? Well, now you can check out the Alliteration Gaming Patreon. Throughout it, you're going to find a handful of different tiers that can include special perks like shoutouts on the supporter card at the beginning of all my videos, access to the private channel in my Discord, and the ability to watch all of my content on Patreon a couple weeks early and totally ad-free. On top of that, the different video tiers will let you commission videos directly from me. We can build a deck together, you can send me some gameplay to commentate, or even select a character for me to spotlight. You can also now join the Alliteration Nation by becoming a channel member on YouTube. Pledging your subscription here is going to grant you a same spot on that supporter card and access to that same Discord channel, as well as hook you up with a member's badge that levels up and access to emotes when I stream on YouTube. I'm going to have the Patreon link down below to check out, and the Discord should you want to join that. And if you want to become a channel member, the join button is what you want to hit. If you end up supporting my work in any way, thank you so much. I'm incredibly grateful, and I can't wait to provide you with more top-notch content at my trademark top speed. Now, let's get on to the video. Good evening, my dear viewers, and welcome to another Alliteration gaming video. My name's Levi, and it is spotlight time once more. This go-around is going to take a trip into the family of the #1 hero and check out his prodigal son. Courtesy of David over at the Patreon, this spotlight is going to focus on Shoto Todoroki. The first ever iteration of Shoto is a 7 hand size character with 20 health and the chaos, fire, and water symbols. It's a fitting trio to represent his fire and ice powers alongside the chaos that this era of Todoroki feels inside of himself. Now, thankfully for the Todoroki fans, his abilities are also going to reflect a lot about Shoto. He's got 2 powerful abilities that beautifully reflect the duality of his half hot and half cold quirk. His first one is a powerful enhance that lets you trade one of your ready resources for an extra damage to your attack for every 2 ranged attacks sitting in your discard pile. This ability is Shoto's Burning Flames, and it's what really defines his whole playstyle. He's going to look to play a very defensive survival game while he goes through turns filling his discard pile up until he hits a critical point at which all of his attacks are going to be able to have massive damage boosted onto them. Committing a foundation is a very real cost for most of the early to mid stages of the game though, so you're going to be even more inclined to play a longer game with Todoroki to make sure that you can build up a stage hefty enough to be able to accommodate committing so many extra foundations. Now, as a 7 hand size character, we're very apt at building, however keeping 20 health alive is going to pose quite the challenge. That's where our ice is going to come in handy. Shoto's response lets him commit himself instead and fuel our discard pile even more to negate any enhance our rival plays outside of their character. This gives us a massive control angle in such a powerful way. An on-demand cancel is an extremely rare commodity in the world of the My Hero Academia card game, and it's what really makes Shoto not only a unique but also a very survivable character. Now, it does commit him, so if you use it aggressively, you will be left wide open on the defense. It's a powerful skill, but not one to use sparingly, as most of the time, it is your entire lifeline. Use it wisely to survive your rival's greatest offensive abilities, then turn around and use all of your built-up damage to strike them back. With Shoto Todoroki, you're going to be able to use your ice to stop and freeze your rival in their tracks before they even have a chance to act, and eventually build up so much burning fire that your ranged attacks will be unstoppable. Now, as defensive as a character Todoroki is, we do have to talk about attacks. We need them to win the game eventually, and our character has already narrowed down the ones we can play pretty hardcore. Let's talk about ranged attacks. Range is a very well supported and extremely relevant keyword in the My Hero card game. Some of the best attacks in all of these symbols also happen to be ranged, so there's no route that we're unhappy to take Shoto on. Now, when it comes to his openers, he's going to play very well with attacks that either progress your game state or guarantee some value. Frankly speaking, we need really good pokes. Here, we're going to take a look at a few attacks that are always profitable to play. Command Pigeon Flock will build you in an ally foundation, which we have some great targets for that you'll see later on. Ignited Arrow will fetch you another attack or deal damage, and Frigid Heatwave has that infamous double card draw. These are all fantastic reasons to throw these attacks out, regardless of whether or not they deal damage. So they're great ways for us to tax the rival without falling behind on resources. In a similar vein, we can play things like Grasping Tape Toss, Tape Swing, and Half Hot Ignition because they will always deal damage. Getting access to both enhances on Half Hot is a Shoto signature. Meanwhile, Tape Toss and Tape Swing are both attacks that deal half damage. This makes them great pokes early game, sure, but also very devastating late game cards when they can deal half of all of that pumped up damage from our character's enhance. The next important phase of our aggression that we're going to talk about is our extenders. Now, as we said earlier, when Shoto is really ready to go in, we're going to want a nice and healthy board that can afford committing so many foundations to our enhance. Another great way to circumvent that is with cards that make playing our attacks much easier. This is why cards like Amphibious Ambush that clear our own card pool, or Massive Flash Freeze and Twisting Azure Inferno buffing out our checks are going to be really critical to our game plan. While we don't have ways to guarantee actions, our own Enhance is fantastic at turning on Twisting Azure the moment that we reach 6 ranged attacks in our discard pile. I wonder if there's a reason Shoto can play a Dobby card so well. Another big facet of our extenders are cards like Frozen Slash and Giant Ice Wall that are going to really threaten the rival while simultaneously passing some massive stats or tons of board pressure to the next moves in our chain. Now when it comes to closing out the game, our options are grand. Ranged attacks have absolutely no shortage of ways to really bring down the pain. Now keep in mind, Shoto is fantastic at putting damage onto our moves, so we're very good at turning anything into a kill card. This makes our options for chains much more versatile and means we'll usually prioritize moves with speed pump on them. While 1.3 million volts does not bring any speed to the equation, it is a gigantic pile of damage and is also very good at committing our rival's board for some pseudo speed. Tongue Whip is an incredibly cheap and terrifying card, being a 4 difficulty attack that pumps its own damage and puts essentially 1 speed onto our attacks for the turn, and Cannon Blast is very good at taking any excess foundations we have and converting them into even more stats. And while Shoto at this point in time may not be too fond of his dear old dad, we can absolutely borrow some of his power with Prominence Burn, a hugely devastating move that's going to clear our card pool for more attacking and put tons of heavily desired speed onto our attacks. We can also take a look at our own cards for cards that can be very versatile finishers in a deck that provide a lot of utility. Freezer Burn is an attack that cannot be interacted with, so it's a wonderful vessel to put tons of damage on once our discard pile is filled up. Meanwhile, Ice Storm's interaction with blocks can steal tons of games, as well as keep us alive off of the back of its massive Breaker 2. We also saw a Breaker 1 on Giant Ice Wall earlier. More Breaker means more chances of staying alive to reach our much desired late game when we're the strongest. Now speaking of staying alive, our stage is going to pull some serious weight here. We are a 20 health character that wants to play the long game, but we don't have any defense on our character himself. Getting a cancel every turn is very powerful, but it's not all that we should rely on to keep us in the fight. So when it comes to blocking, defensive tricks on our 3 symbols are going to carry us. Water defense has always been premium in the game, with powerhouses like Rescue Completed, but nowadays even Chaos and Fire 2 have access to tons of ways to reduce speed and ensuring that we're chain blocking like no other. Some of these even have aggressive uses as well, like Ice Gliding and Heroic Lineage. We can also look to include defensive options like Training with Gunhead, Wall Cling, and Faith Shield to protect us from some threatening throws, or just make sure that we're never getting zone checked and taking a big half damage. Now let's pivot back and think about Todoroki's response a little more. It's a very powerful control piece, and the thing about control is the more of it you stack up, the more binding that it is. If you pack lots of extra control options in your deck, you'll have to worry a lot less about making the wrong calls with Shoto, as you're packing lots of backup options. Having more than one way to cancel the rival's abilities can also be the make or break between them being able to play out of the situation in the first place. Cards like Fulfilled My Duty are going to keep your rival's attacks from getting too out of hand, while Decoy Duplicate can send away anything that starts to get too threatening. We can also utilize cards like Lost in Thought and Irrefutable to posture more control over the options in our rival's stage. For even more synergy in our deck, Water can also give us a ton of cool tricks to further support our ranged attacks with some extra stats and committal pressure, and of course, Exhausted Exclamation in our character that commits himself is just going to push our hand size even more. Next, let's look at foundations that do a really good job at mitigating our costs in a few different ways. One of the first things that we're going to look for is foundations that interact very well with the commit cost of our Enhance. Whether that's through ones that ready themselves back up, like Haughty and a Refreshing Slice, something like All Worked Up with its playable while committed ability, or ones that are going to grant us some nice speed bonuses in tandem with our damage bonus when they're committed, such as Friends of Animals and Gotcha. These cards all either make our Enhance free or churn even more benefit out of that cost. We can also conserve foundations through the use of cards like Press Conference and League Interview that are going to really curb our difficulty curve some more, and we can find more stats on stats with things like Defrosting and Revel at his Masterpiece. The best part about some of these last few is that they discard cards as cost, meaning our discard pile is going to stay even more fueled to stoke the flames of our damage increase. Now, as nice as those foundations are, our asset options are plenty bountiful. Under the water symbol, we get great use out of Sports Festival Stadium for more burn damage on our tape tosses and tape swings, and then Coda can provide some really nice speed pump that we want and also protect us with even more breaker type options. We're a character that wants to block a lot already, so the downsides of these two actually don't harm us very much. Next up, I want to highlight all three of the set 4 assets that can provide really good control value in their own unique ways. League of Villains gives us a second cancel, Young Heroes lets us commit their best foundation every turn, and Top Pro Heroes can take away those keywords like stun and combo so we don't have to bother canceling them. We can also go through our deck quite quick, so the enhance on Top Row Heroes will not be rare to see either. When it comes to actions, Fire is going to finally get to shine a little bit here because they have some of the best blue cards around. Massive stats with Sugar Rush, control options with Seizing the Advantage, and momentum stealing with Capture Evildoers makes for a great lineup of candidates. Looking at our other symbols, we can find even more cancels. Nullify lets us reach those character abilities that Shoto can't, and Evil versus Good lets us reach the responses that Shoto can't. That's going to conclude our showcase today on Shoto Todoroki. Thanks again to David for commissioning this video. If you enjoyed it and if you learned anything from it, I would love some feedback via the comments section or just a smash on the like button. And if you want your own video experience like this, you can check out my Patreon for all of the video commission tiers, including the character spotlights. I'm going to have everything linked down below in the description and in the pinned comments, but if all you did was just enjoyed this video, I appreciate that through and through, and I cannot wait to see you in the next video.